Hello everybody and welcome back to Armchair Bikers TV. Today I'm going to go over 5 bikes that I am excited for 2025. All 5 of these bikes are going to be available to be purchased in 2025 and they all sort of belong in a different category of motorcycling. So all that and more coming up next. So first bike on the list that I'm excited about is the Kawasaki W230. Kawasaki does have a W800, but they recently just came out with a smaller little brother version, W230. So this bike is a retro bike, of course. It's inspired by Kawasaki's older models from the 1960s. For this particular bike, we have a 233cc single-cylinder air-cooled engine, which is pretty cool because you don't have the radiator hanging off the front, so it really stays faithful to that retro design. But it is fuel injected, so you don't have to mess around with the carburetor or the choke, especially if you're riding in colder weather. So just push and go, easy there. Also, this bike is very lightweight at 315 pounds wet, claimed by Kawasaki. And in addition to that, a 29.3-inch seat height. So if you're a shorter rider or if you're a beginning rider and you just want something that's lightweight, easy to reach the ground, easy to handle, this is going to be both light and easy to reach the ground, of course. But if you're not a beginner rider, this is also just going to be a nice, good handling, nimble bike that you could use as a city commuter or a little weekend bomb around town bike. Now, me personally, I think it would look pretty cool with a set of like semi-aggressive knobbies on it, and you could definitely do some scrambler style dirt road riding with this bike. I think that would be really cool. But even without that, the aesthetics of this bike are really interesting. Almost remind me a little bit of like a Triumph or a Royal Enfield. But yeah, it looks really cool, and at a price of $5,599, really not a bad price point, especially at that entry level. And then one final note, 3.1 gallon fuel tank. So if you're getting 50 to 60 miles to the gallon, which I believe you would be with a small displacement fuel injected motor like this, that's going to give you some pretty long range in between fuel stops. And it looks like it has a pretty comfortable, relatively flat seat on it, as well as it does have passenger accommodations. So pretty excited about that one. Let us know if you are also excited about this bike down in the comments. So next bike up on the list comes from Yamaha. This is the Yamaha FZ R9. This bike was announced not too long ago. It's a pretty recent announcement from Yamaha. This bike was originally thought to be the R1 replacement, but it seems like it's just an additional bike in their super sport lineup. So if you're not familiar with this bike, it's using that 890cc CP3 engine that Yamaha is also using in their MT-09. I used to have a 2017 FZ09, and that was when they were still called an FZ, and that had a smaller displacement, older version of the CP3 engine, but this is going to have the new updated, larger displacement CP3. This is going to feature the new 6-axis IMU, which is of course going to feature traction control, slide control, wheelie control, and more advanced braking control, all of which are adjustable. Also, Yamaha notes that this has specific ECU tuning and gear ratios that are different from the MT-09 to make it more tailored as a super sport style track bike, which is an interesting thing, I thought. Brembo Stylema calipers, so some real big, beefy Brembos on this thing, which you're going to need, and fully adjustable KYB suspension. Also, another claim by Yamaha, this is the lightest frame on a Yamaha super sport bike. So this bike comes in at 430 pounds wet, which is actually quite a few pounds lighter than the R1. The R1 comes in at 448 pounds wet. Both those weights are what Yamaha claims, of course. So a little bit of a lighter weight bike than the R1. But of course, it's a smaller displacement bike. It's got one less cylinder, so it should be. But I thought that was an interesting note. Also, if you're shopping around at super sports and you were thinking about an R1, this bike is $12,499 US compared to a base model R1 starts at $18,999, right? So basically 19 grand for an R1. So this is significantly cheaper than an R1, yet it's still going to give you plenty of horsepower on the street. It's a more capable bike than probably the people that are going to be riding it. And if you are looking to get a track bike, you're not going to have any issues using this on a racetrack. You're probably going to have just as much fun on this as you would an R1, in my opinion. Like, as I mentioned before, I had a 2017 FZ R9, and that bike was phenomenal. One of the funnest bikes I've ever ridden. Had tons of horsepower, tons of torque. It was almost hard to keep the front end from lifting off the ground. So taking that fun engine that I remember from the FZ R9 that I had, and keeping in mind that this is going to be the new version of it, which is a larger displacement, sticking that in a super sport chassis, this bike just looks like it's going to be a ton of fun, a bit of a bargain if you compare it to the R1. And I don't think you're going to be disappointed in getting this bike instead of an R1, especially for that money savings. And just like the R1, this is probably the most important feature on the bike. It's got the winglets on the front. So it's not a real sport bike if it doesn't have the wings. So Yamaha took care of you. They put wings on it. So now you can take advantage of the cool factor that the wings provide. So, because nobody's going to be going fast enough to take advantage of the aerodynamic factors. Even if you think you do, probably not. But all right, next up on the list is from Honda. Now, if you're familiar with our channel, you're going to be familiar with this bike. And I'm talking about the Honda Rebel 1100. But this particular bike is the Rebel 1100 DCT SE. So it's the special edition version of the Rebel. So some things that make this bike different from the Rebel that I have. You have a different seat on there. It's Honda's Comfort seat, which has, it's basically the same seat, but it has like diamond stitching on it. It might be a little bit thicker. You have the headlight cowl that is paint matched. You do have fork boots, which adds a cool little vibe to it. A shorter front fender, and then bar and mirrors come as standard on this bike. Now, new for this new model year of the Rebel 1100, and this applies to all the Rebel 1100 models, they're all getting a 5-inch TFT display with Honda RoadSync compatibility, and they're getting a USB-C port that's going to be on the left side of the handlebars, so you can plug your phone in, and again, have that compatibility with Honda RoadSync, so you can have your navigation, phone calls, music, all that stuff displayed on that 5-inch TFT display, which is cool because, for example, my Rebel, it just has the regular LCD display, the round LCD display on it. So that's a really cool upgrade to see all across the board. But this special edition in particular, I love the color on it. I love the color of the wheels. I think the headlight cowl and the fork boots really give it a good, almost retro vibe to it. And the bar end mirrors, that's a cool little feature as well. So overall, excited to see them introducing new variations of the Rebel 1100. It's a bike that I've put, I think, 13,000 miles on mine as of the recording of this video. I love it. If you're familiar with our channel, you know that we got tons of videos featuring my Rebel in it. I did a little bit of my own modifications to it, like knobby tires and a skid plate, and I've been using mine more of as like a scrambler style bike rather than a road bike. But overall, it's a fantastic bike. The engine is a fantastic power plant directly out of the Africa Twin. It's that same 1100 parallel twin that you might be familiar with. And yeah, just a really cool bike, and I'm glad that Honda is coming out with more variations. The only thing I guess I'm upset to see is that the special edition model is only available in the DCT transmission. I am partial to the manual transmission version, so I sort of wish that they did a special edition with the manual and not just the DCT, and that would also maybe make it a little cheaper too if you weren't so sold on the DCT. With that being said, I have nothing against the DCT. I just prefer a manual transmission because that's just what I'm used to. I've mentioned this in previous videos of why I went with a manual transmission on my personal Rebel. So if you haven't seen those videos, check those out on our channel. But overall, this is a great alternative if you are looking for a cruiser style motorcycle, but you want to stick with a Japanese manufacturer, and you don't want to go with something like an Indian or a Harley. This is a pretty cool option that's going to give you a lightweight bike, a good amount of horsepower, but still have that cruiser vibe to it. One thing that I am happy to note, however, is that Honda is keeping the manual transmission version of the Rebel available. It's just not available in the special edition configuration. But $11,099 US for the special edition. But again, if you want to just stick with the regular base model with the manual transmission, and you're not worried about the special color and the DCT, that starts at $9,599, which not really a bad price for that bike. I've gotten a ton of use out of it. I'm continuing to get a ton of use out of it. As I said, I got like 13,000 miles as of the recording of this video. So, and 13,000 hard miles. Again, if you've seen our videos, you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, great bike, and excited to see them coming out with a special edition of it. All right, next on the list, another bike from Honda. This is the Honda DAX 125. So this is the newest addition to the Honda Mini Moto lineup. The DAX 125 is basically, it's like a reincarnation of the old CT70s or Trail 70s of yesteryear. What's interesting about this is that I think they really nailed the styling on this. The colors that are available are really nice looking. Especially the blue color. I think the blue color really pops. And it's got a big, nice, flat, comfy seat on it. It's got the old round headlight. They really did a good job with the styling. And of course, you can't forget to mention that big sweeping chrome exhaust pipe. So as far as aesthetics go, I think they nailed it. It really does look totally different from anything else that's in the Honda lineup. And what's interesting about this is that it's actually similar to the Super Cub in the way of it has a 4-speed semi-auto transmission, so no clutch, just like the Super Cub. So no clutch to worry about. So if you're a beginner rider and you don't want to worry about having to deal with a clutch, this would be another model in addition to the Super Cub that you don't have to worry about it. You still have to shift, but at least there's no clutch you have to deal with. Or if you're not a beginner rider and you just want something that's just a little more relaxed to ride and you don't have to worry about a clutch, again, this is another option in addition to the Super Cub. Boomer Buzz, again, if you're familiar with our channel, he has a Super Cub. He's put tons of miles on that. And a lot of times he'll use that bike when we're out filming videos on the road because he doesn't have a clutch to worry about, so he can hold the camera with his left hand. Might not be the safest thing to do, but not having the clutch does allow you to have a free hand for filming or whatever. So certainly something to note on this bike. Another thing to note on this bike is that it is the same bore and stroke and compression ratio as the Grom motor. So this is the same new generation motor. When they came out with the new generation Grom, they did update like the bore and stroke and the compression, and they gave the Grom a 5-speed transmission and they got away from the 4-speed. But even though this has the 4-speed semi-auto, it still has the updated cylinder head with the new bore and stroke and compression ratio. So same performance out of this motor. You're just going to have to deal with slightly different gearing as this does only have the 4 speeds. Another thing to note too, this does have a 1-gallon fuel tank. That's 0.6 less gallons than the Grom. But the cool thing about these mini motos is that Honda claims 106.7 miles to the gallon, and I can personally verify that I have definitely gotten over 100 miles to the gallon on these bikes. So even at a 1-gallon fuel capacity, you're still going at least 100 miles, which is plenty of time to be on this bike, and by that point you're going to want a fuel stop anyway. So one last note on this bike is that it is a little pricier than your base model Grom. So this bike starts at $4,199. The Grom non-ABS version, so the absolute base version of the Grom, starts at $3,599 US. So you're going to pay a little bit of a premium for the DAX, but again, if you're into the styling and you like that it's got the 4-speed with no clutch, I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, it's still relatively affordable. And again, back to my knobby tire thing, if you put a set of knobbies on this, this is such a great little dirt road runner, trail bike, campground bike. I mean, whatever. You can use these things anywhere. They're so easy to ride. They're so nimble. They're so practical. They're so cheap to ride because of the fuel economy. So you can't go wrong with a Honda Mini Moto no matter which one you buy. This one it excites me because it really has some unique styling, and I'm excited that they brought this to the lineup. So last but not least, this bike comes from Suzuki. I'm probably the most excited about this bike. This is the Suzuki DRZ4S. This is, of course, Suzuki's brand new lightweight dual sport, a replacement for the old DRZ400. And boy, well, let me tell you, I'm excited about this one. I've never really cared much for Suzuki's. There really hasn't been too many bikes from Suzuki that have excited me too much. Boomer Buzz used to have a Van 200, which was a pretty cool old retro dual sport style bike. But this really does excite me because it's finally a new DRZ. They've had the DRZ400 and the DR650 for so long. that it's exciting to see them come out with something new. It's got a fully redesigned 398cc engine. It's got fuel injection, ride-by-wire, and with the ride-by-wire, we have different ride modes, a 4-mode traction control system, and front and rear ABS. But the kicker is that the front and rear ABS you can turn off. It's all switchable. So if you don't want the front and rear ABS, which of course you're not going to want to on dirt, you can turn it off, which is great. Really glad to see that. Fully adjustable KYB suspension, both front and rear, and 11 inches of travel in the front, 11.6 inches of travel in the rear. So that's more travel than a KLX 300, more travel than a CRF 300L. The caveat with that is that you're going to have a taller seat height than both those bikes. So this bike does have a 36.2 inch seat height, which is actually a little bit shorter than the old DRZ400. DRZ400 had a seat height of 36.8 inches, so 0.6 inches shorter for whatever that's worth, but it is going to be taller than the Kawasaki and the Honda. But again, you get the longer suspension travel, which I think is worth it. Now, one other note on this bike is that it is going to be heavier than both the Honda and the Kawasaki at 333 pounds wet, claimed by Suzuki. That is a little bit heavier than the Honda, again, 300L and the Kawasaki KLX 300. The Honda comes in at 306 pounds and the Kawasaki's 302 pounds. So a little bit heavier, but it's a little bit of a larger displacement engine. Hopefully going to be making a little bit more horsepower than those bikes. I would hope so, right? So I don't think the weight is really that big of a deal. And yeah, it really looks, it looks aesthetically pleasing. I think they did a great job with the styling on it. I'm really excited to see that they put fully adjustable suspension on it, because that definitely is a shortcoming, at least of like the Honda 300L. Everybody knows that the suspension from the factory on those bikes is sort of subpar. Don't get me wrong, it's totally rideable, but there's not really much adjustment on it, and it's definitely soft from the factory, especially the rear. So I'm excited to see that they maybe spent a little bit more money on the suspension with this bike. So that's great to see. This really does have potential to dominate the lightweight dual sport segment, depending on the price. That's the only issue right now. The price has not been announced by Suzuki yet. Now I've read that this bike is going on sale in April of 2025. So hopefully they're going to get back to us with a price relatively soon, because that's the only thing that might hold this bike back. And again, there's no horsepower figures on the DRZ4S yet, so we'll have to see how it compares as far as horsepower goes. But overall, really excited. I think this is a very promising dual sport as long as they get the price right. This actually is a bike that I am personally considering buying. I think this would be a great addition to the channel, and I love dual sports, so does Boomer Buzz. That's primarily what we've ridden in the past. I grew up on dirt bikes. My first street legal bike was a Yamaha XT250. That's the bike that I passed my motorcycle road test on. After that, I got a CRF 250L, which I put some miles on and enjoyed that. And then later, Boomer Buzz took that bike over and he rode it for quite a while. He also did have a CRF 250L Rally. Of course, that's the Rally version of the CRF with the different fairing on it and the windshield. Basically the same bike, but just aesthetically different, and does give you a little bit of wind protection. But he loved those bikes and put a decent amount of miles on them. I also did have a Yamaha WR250R, which is still my absolute favorite dual sport to this day. I really regret selling that bike, especially after Yamaha discontinued it. When I sold it, I was originally planning to maybe get another one in the future, and then Yamaha discontinued it. So now, of course, the only option to get a WR250 is to buy one used. And because Yamaha hasn't even come out with any sort of replacement, prices on used WR250s are still kind of crazy, especially if you find a real low mileage, clean example. They're pretty pricey, but yeah, I've absolutely loved my WR250. In addition to that, Boomer Buzz has owned, I don't even know how many TW200s. He's had plenty of TW200s over the years. Those are great, awesome little dual sports as well. So we've had our fair share of dual sports over the years, and we should get back to doing some more dual sport riding. You know, I was just thinking we really haven't done any dual sport style content on this channel. So if you'd like to see that, again, let us know in the comments down below. And if you'd like to see this bike on the channel, again, let us know. I really think that if the price is right, then if the price is right, I really think if the price is right, this would be a perfect candidate to bring onto the channel and do some more off-road content. All right, guys, that is everything I have for you. Those are my top 5 bikes that I'm excited for in 2025. Of course, there's plenty of other bikes to be excited for, but these were just some ones that stuck out to me. If you have any of your own personal bikes that you're excited about for 2025, or if you have any bike purchases planned for the year of 2025, let us know in the comments down below. Let us know what bikes you would like to see on the channel. Should I get a DRZ4S, or should we get a Honda DAX 125? Is that content you'd be interested in? Let us know down below. Again, we always appreciate you guys watching. We're trying to start off this new year strong with more routine videos. So leave a like, share, subscribe, help us grow the channel. As always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.